Greetings, fellow men. Servus Männer. It's Red Pill Germany again. So since I started my channel, I get regularly bombarded with questions about Angela Merkel and how we can be so insane as to elect her in the first place, and will she be re-elected, when will we get rid of her finally, and so on and so on. So obviously my audience doesn't like Angela Merkel very much. And I do want to answer these questions, but instead of writing comments, I thought that this topic is so important and so many people have asked me about this that I think it is more appropriate to make a video about that. So I will actually start a mini-series on Angela Merkel, her rise to power and her prospects for the future. But I really want to start this mini-series with giving some background on Angela Merkel, because it is a very controversial subject actually. Where does she come from? What is her background? What can we say about her past? What do we know? What is not known? There are actually so many conspiracy theories about who Angela Merkel really is, so I want to start with this topic in part 1 here, the backgrounds or the origins of Angela Merkel. So if you would Google Angela Merkel and Hitler, or Angela Merkel and Freemasons, Jesuits, or maybe space aliens, I'm sure you will find some hits, Maybe she is the lost daughter of the Führer, or she is actually some kind of a Knight Templar or something like that, or just a Soviet spy. Yeah? So I think the main problem is that there is so much in her past that is out of the perspective of many people, especially people who did not live in a Soviet regime like she did growing up. So many things that we don't understand, so many things that are kind of murky, we don't really know anything about it, and she also is not very open speaking about these days. So it seems like she's hiding something, or maybe she is just very private about this personal information. And in this scenario, of course, we have a potent fertilizer for a whole plethora of conspiracy theories. As some people also say that Merkel is actually Jewish, which would mean that her mother should be Jewish, but there is no evidence for that whatsoever. So I will just run down the basics, what we definitely know, and then I will comment on some of the scandals and points of interest that came up in the last years. So first of all, she was born on July 17th in 1954 in Hamburg, Western Germany, and just a couple of weeks later her father, who was a student of theology, took his entire family to East Berlin, a little bit north of East Berlin actually, in Brandenburg, in order to take over a Lutheran Christian parish. Now this was at a time before the wall was built, when actually a lot of people moved west to get away from the Soviet sector, the GDR, the Eastern Soviet Republic. All the people came west, but he went east. Now that is the first important point. So some people say that she wasn't really born in Hamburg, she was actually born in the US and then was inserted as a spy into Eastern Germany. But yeah, let's assume she was born in Hamburg, like the official version is. This is one of these points where you can say, on the one hand side, it might just have been that the Lutheran Church was very concerned about the welfare of the Christians and the parishes in the East and Christianity in the East in general, so they sent young pastors into the East in order to help the church there. From another standpoint, you could say, oh, this guy went into the East instead staying West, so that must mean he was a hardcore communist with some Marxist convictions, huh? So, like we will see later, there are many points and many situations where you could assume motives in one direction or just a very simple explanation, but we don't know for sure. So the name of the father, the family name of Angela Merkel also, was Kasner at that time, and that name was originally Polish. It was just Germanized to Kasner because the paternal grandfather of Angela Merkel, the father of that young pastor, Horst Kasner, the grandfather was called Ludwig Kasner, but actually Ludwig Kasmirczak or something like that. I cannot pronounce Polish. I'm really sorry, but it was a Polish name. So that means Angela Merkel is actually 1/4 Polish, and that is not a big scandal or something. She mentioned that, yeah, and in her biography you can also read all about that. The real scandal was not that she is 1/4 Polish. The scandal, kind of, that wasn't a scandal because it's Germany, is that her grandfather, the Polish grandfather, probably fought against the Germans, because there was a picture that shows him in a uniform. That uniform was by a military unit under French command that fought against the German Empire in the First World War. Now, in a lot of other countries, that would have been a big scandal that the ancestors of a chancellor or a president or something fought against the own people. Like, for example, in Poland, Donald Tusk had also a little scandal about his grandfather, who was in the German army. But in Germany, this is not really a big scandal, because we're not a normal country. So we also think that the German Empire in World War I was as bad as the Nazis were in World War II. So fighting against them is a good thing, actually, right? So, but we can already tell from that she is not proud German patriot, probably. Yeah, I think you can all remember that scene where she took away the German flag from one of the party members of the CDU at a celebration after an election, and you can really see the look of disgust on her face. I linked that video, that short video clip, in the description below. Yeah, so being a quarter Polish is of course not an issue, but when you take into account also that the grandfather fought against the Germans and that she is not a patriot now, but she is actually disgusted by the mere sight of our national flag, yeah, these things all taken together now paint a different picture, right? And in other countries, that would not be head of government material. Okay, so moving on from her childhood, she grew up then in Eastern Germany. She is said to have been a very intelligent girl and a good student, especially in the Russian language and mathematics. She was doing very well, and she also became a member of the Freie Deutsche Jugend, FDJ. That is the youth organization in Soviet Germany, kind of like the Hitler Youth under Hitler. So, but this was just the general youth organization in the GDR, the Eastern German Republic. So after her high school graduation, her Abitur in 1973, she started to study physics at the Karl Marx University of Leipzig. In 1977, she married a fellow student, Ulrich Merkel. This is where she has her last name from. She kept that name because the marriage was divorced just in 1982, so just 5 years later actually. And then she applied at the University of Ilmenau. She did not receive that job there, but however she moved to the Academy of the Sciences of the GDR. Now that was a very big Soviet-style research institute, and she worked there as a research scientist. And the original story goes that she stayed there, published some papers, and led a very quiet life, trying not to draw attention to herself and not to get into conflict with this oppressive regime she had to live under. The general picture that is painted of her is that she just wanted to do her science, and she chose that physics career so that she doesn't have to deal with politics too much. So, for example, in order to receive the doctorate together with the physics dissertation, she also, like everybody else, had to write a quote-unquote research paper or on studies in Marxism and Leninism. So, and that was not graded as highly as the physics dissertation. She only got a C on that, whereas she got an A in physics. But they were all required to also write about Marxism, Leninism, right? And she didn't want to go into another field. She says she chose science because that is factual stuff, and she doesn't have to deal with politics too much. She didn't like that. And then, as I said, she led this quiet researcher life, this inner migration in the world of science, so to speak, until that slumber ended when Germany finally reunited. Now then she became involved in smaller parties that formed then, and found her way eventually into the Christian Conservative Party under Helmut Kohl, the CDU, and the rest I will cover then in my next video. But now I want to discuss some other important points where people have doubts and questions. Now, first of all, she was the daughter of a pastor. And these people, or like Christians in this communist state, were discriminated against heavily, and it wasn't really normal that they were allowed to study. She, however, was allowed to study at one of the most prestigious universities of the GDR. Now, this fits in nicely with the fact that her father was very loyal to the communist regime. So maybe because her parents were loyal communists, she, unlike many other Christians or children of pastors, was allowed to enter the university. Now also, when she applied at the University of Ilmenau, the job that she didn't get, she was actually approached by a member of the MFS, the Ministerium für Staatssicherheit, the Ministry for State Security, that is the secret police of Eastern Germany. Now that you are approached by them was actually an ordinary affair. They asked you if you want to be an informer or if you want to work for them, and she declined that offer. She said she turned it down. That's what she officially says. Many people, however, have their doubts there, and the question always comes up whether or not she actually was an unofficial informant of the secret police. So that means that later on, when she worked in that institute as a research scientist, that she actually spied on her colleagues. So we don't really know that. It is strange, however, that her job at the Academy of the Sciences of the GDR is actually, I think, a much better job than the job she applied for in the first place, and that she actually got a better job after turning down the offer of the state security, secret police people. That sounds dubious to me. But again, we don't know why she got that job then. During her time at the Academy of the Sciences, she also was responsible for agitation and propaganda. That is at least what a lot of witnesses say, and what also her biography says, I think. She herself just says she was only responsible for cultural questions. She wasn't responsible for propaganda at all. She would remember that. But many people actually say that she was responsible for agitation and propaganda, agitprop. Now, she actually had a lot of privileges then. She was allowed to go to the Soviet Union, she was very interested in Poland, and she also went to Prague. The man who was later to become her husband, Joachim Sauer, is actually a professor of chemistry, also actually proofread her dissertation, that is not in physics, but in theoretical chemistry and quantum chemistry. Now, that theoretical physicists excel in quantum chemistry is not a strange thing. That is very usual. I mean, I know a lot of people who are in quantum chemistry or theoretical chemistry, but have a degree in physics. So that's not unusual. And that a boyfriend or looks over your dissertation as a female scientist, that in and of itself is also not strange. However, that fuels conspiracy theories now that she is not really a scientist, but that she only got that dissertation as a favor for her services to the state, and that this is part of her cover, and that the dissertation was actually written by Joachim Sauer. Now, of course, we have no idea if that is true, but again, there are so many conspiracy theories about her because people would just like to know more about her past, and for some reason, maybe it is just her character, but for some reason she is very private about this information. One of the most curious incidents that spawns a lot of conspiracy theories about her actually working for the Communist Secret Service was the observation of the regime critic Robert Havemann. Now, he was an author, a writer, who also sold some books in Western Germany, which was illegal. And so he was a critic of the communist regime, and therefore he was placed under arrest. And even when his arrest was ended, he was under strict observation by the Secret Service. And everybody who entered or left his apartment or his house there were pictures, everything was monitored, all the names were written down, and there were gigantic folders of data about him and everybody who had contact with him. Now, if you wanna really get a feeling about how this Ministerium für Staatssicherheit, or Stasi as we say, how they work, then you should watch the movie The Life of Others. It gives a very realistic depiction of how it was when everybody can basically spy on everybody else and nobody can trust anybody anymore. Now, and in one of these folders there was a picture of Angela Merkel, so that means Merkel was allowed to have access to that guy, and that is very strange. Now, some people even say that she interrogated him, but once again, we do not know what the real background for that visit of Angela Merkel at this house was. So, I will sum up twice now. First of all, the official version, or the version that is actually the one that Angela Merkel prefers, is that she grew up in Eastern Germany in the household of a Lutheran pastor. Then she studied physics, and she chose this career so that she doesn't have to deal with all that political bullshit that she didn't like. And then when the wall finally fell, she could become the member of a democratic party, and the rest is history. Now, about her membership in these communist youth organizations, she says that she had to play the game in order to become a physicist. Yeah? If she hadn't played this game, she could never have studied, and she always just did precisely enough in order to get ahead in her career. Now, other people say that she was a Marxist, a communist with a lot of conviction, very loyal to the Soviet regime, and that she was actually an informant on her colleagues, yeah, and that she did not do the bare minimum just so that she can study physics, but instead she really took the initiative and she chose this position for agitation and propaganda so that she can become the perfect weapon of communism against the Western world, which we see in action now. So no matter which of these versions is true, or if the truth is somewhere in between, or if she is in fact a Jesuit Illuminati agent, it is clear that she is not a German patriot, that she does not have a strong identification with German culture or the German people, and that is probably what we can say for sure. So in my next video, I will cover how it could be that this weird looking, awkward Protestant woman from Eastern Germany could actually become such a prominent figure in the Conservative Party of the unified Germany, so that she could become the Chancellor of Germany. I hope you liked this one and maybe it clarified some points. So see you in the next video again. Have a great day. Servus, Kameraden.